one right here. This one right here. It's kind of quiet in here.
All right, what's going on, y'all? What's up?
Quiet.
First things first, I just want to say thank you for showing love on the no zone defense. That's definitely much appreciated. Before we get started, I have a couple of questions for you all. Would you all mind raising your hand if you feel that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player on the world right now? Can you all raise your hand if you feel that way? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. All right, well.
Right now,
like active.
Right now.
So if your hand is not raised, that means you don't feel that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player in the world right now.
Raise your hand if you feel like Giannis Antetokounmpo is the greatest basketball player in the world right now. Wow.
Did I just hear who is that? Oh. All right. Another person. Can you all please raise your hand if you feel that Kevin Durant is the best player in the world right now?
You don't know?
So, I got another last one for you all. Last one. The Knicks and Nets. Are there any Knicks fans in here? Any? I'm sorry to hear that. Are there any Nets fans in here?
Woo! Nets fans?
Sorry to hear that. So, I'm a Laker fan, as was mentioned. Laker fan since birth. Tough times for the Lakers, but it is what it is. Obviously, there's a lot of franchises in the league, and Ahmad has certain opinions on certain franchises. He likes to use this word called a poverty franchise.
Definitely.
And what a poverty franchise is, if you don't mind, Ahmad, could you explain to the people what a poverty franchise is?
A poverty franchise is the New York Knicks. Yeah. That is a poverty franchise.
Why do you feel that way? Is it something that they've done? Is it the way they play? Is it the coaching? What is it?
No, I feel like the Knicks are a poverty franchise because the biggest thing in the 2021-22 NBA season, they were known for Bing Bong.
Oh, you're saying the biggest? I mean,
the
I
biggest thing they accomplished was going viral for Bing Bong.
I don't know. You might be hurting some feelings when I hear Knicks land. I know it's common, it's easy, but I mean, there's still New York's team, right? The Knicks are New York's team, right? Or are we saying the Nets are? No. The Knicks are.
The Knicks.
I don't know if there was confidence in that statement when I heard it.
It really wasn't. Let me ask you something, Theus. What do the Knicks need to do this offseason to become a title contender, or let's pump the brakes, a playoff contender?
We got to get them to the playoffs first?
Playoff contender. Playoff contender.
Trade Julius Randle. Why trade Julius? Would you trade Julius?
He's the problem. He got paid and didn't know how to act afterwards.
Ooh, I felt the emotion in that statement. I'm right there with you, man. You would trade Julius?
I definitely would trade Julius Randle. And you know who I would target if I'm the New York Knicks? Donovan Mitchell. I think the New York Knicks are lacking a true star. I think the New York Knicks need somebody that can bring excitement to Madison Square Garden, need somebody they can build around, and it's definitely not Julius Randle. The only problem is, who are the Knicks going to trade? Because Julius Randle's stock is low, as we all know, due to this last
And
regular
also,
season.
too, who would they be getting in return? You mentioned Donovan Mitchell.
Yes.
Right? But is that enough to get them a championship?
It's a start. I feel like you get Donovan Mitchell, you get a young player, and then you got stars that will want to come and play with Donovan Mitchell at Madison Square Garden.
But speaking of Spider, right, shout out, I know you're a big fan of the Utah Jazz. So what's your thoughts on the way their season is kind of gone?
Definitely expect it. I feel like if you watch the Jazz play, you notice that obviously Rudy Gobert is not worth that max contract that he got. Rudy Gobert is not a second option on a playoff team. Rudy Gobert probably is a player that you want to, I would say, definitely have as your fourth or fifth best player, but not your second best player if you're trying to win a championship. And clearly, the reason why I'm talking about Donovan Mitchell going to the New York Knicks is because obviously that era is probably going to end this offseason with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell.
Well, hopefully Spider sees better days ahead of him, right? He goes to the Knicks. Hopefully the Knicks can win a championship. Can you imagine if the Knicks did win a championship?
No. No. No, I can't.
I mean, you never know, though. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about the Lakers, not making the playoffs, and that's one of the most historic franchise. Are there any Laker fans in here? Am I solo in that? Are there any Laker fans? Yikes.
Oh, Laker fans?
That's surprising, though. I mean, I tell you what, though. I guarantee you, if the Lakers were in the playoffs, if the Lakers won the championship this year, there'll probably be some Laker fans. But who do you think has a brighter future? The Lakers or the Knicks?
I mean, obviously the Lakers. Anybody.
I don't know about obviously.
Obviously, like anybody but the New York Knicks. I mean,
Bro, why do you hate the Knicks so much?
if we're being honest, the Los Angeles Lakers still have Anthony Davis. They still have LeBron James. Even though LeBron James is getting older, he's still shown out this year that he was a top 5 basketball player in the world. So if you have Anthony Davis, you have LeBron James, that's clearly better than anything that the New York Knicks have on their roster.
Now, the lack of playoffs doesn't hurt you? It doesn't shift your opinion on the Lakers' future? The fact that they had that big three and still didn't even make the play-in, let alone the playoffs?
No, because the injuries happen. And if you look at the New York Knicks, if you're talking about who has the better future, the New York Knicks went to the playoffs last year. Before that, it was 7 years.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, right? You mentioned St. Louis, your guy, Jason Tatum. How do we feel about that Celtics Nets series? What does that say about the Celtics? And/or what does that say about the Nets?
Well, I know we got a couple Net fans in here. I will say I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, I think Boston Celtics won that series against the Brooklyn Nets because they were the better team. I feel like Jason Tatum established himself as the best young player in the league, at least best 25 and under. I know some people are going to say Luka Doncic, but if you look at Jason Tatum, for his skill set, 3-level scorer, can guard 1 through 5 on the basketball court, can really do everything. The only thing that he really lacks, and he's improving in this department, is his passing. So I feel like going forward, the Boston Celtics, when they play the Milwaukee Bucks, they have a real chance to reach the NBA Finals.
Yeah, so you talked about the winning team. It's good. Shout out to the Boston Celtics sweeping in the first round. But the other side, the opponent, the Brooklyn Nets. What's next for the Nets? Right, you still got Kevin Durant.
You tell me.
All right,
you tell me.
You still got one of the best players in the world, Kevin Durant. You still got one of the most clutch players in the league, in Kyrie Irving. You still got one of the best defenders in the league, in Ben Simmons. But is it time to panic? I know there's mixed opinions about who their coach should be, but my thing is, if you have the talent, whose fault is it that they weren't able to get it done? Because you can point the fingers at a lot of people. But if there's one person, or is it the entire organization? And I don't want to hear the word trade. You got a team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. I don't think you need much more. And hopefully, we get a healthy Ben Simmons. Hopefully, we get a Brooklyn Nets team that competes and at least wins a playoff game.
I say you run it back. You got Ben Simmons coming back. You got Kyrie Irving coming back. You got Kevin Durant coming back. You go out, you try to find some veterans, some guys that can play both sides of the ball. Two-way defenders would be nice. And you run it back. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think this series should be indicative on the future of the Brooklyn Nets. I still think their future is bright because to me, arguably they have Kevin Durant, who if you don't think he's the best player in the world, he's at least top 3. You still got Kyrie Irving, one of the greatest point guards in the world, top 5 point guard in the NBA. And you got Ben Simmons, who even though he hasn't played he didn't play this whole regular season, he's still arguably the best defender in the NBA.
But we don't know that, though.
I know that.
We don't know that.
I know that.
It's been a whole year. I mean, I see what you're saying. But anytime a player misses an entire year, hopefully he comes back and is able to play well. But that's a heavy bet.
I'm confident in Ben Simmons' defensive ability because that's what he does best on the basketball court. Regardless of the fact that he didn't play a year, you don't lose that ability.
And so obviously his teammate being Kevin Durant, do you feel like obviously right now, you got KD, you got Steph, you got Bron. Some people even argue Jokic. I'm not one of those individuals. But if Giannis goes out and wins a championship this year, is it even a conversation on who the best player in the world is? I don't think so. I don't even think there's going to be a toss-up. I don't think there's going to be maybe it's someone else. Maybe no. If Giannis goes out and wins back to back, I'm not entertaining any other sort of debate about anyone else.
And that's a fact. That's valid. I feel like if Giannis goes out and wins a championship, not only is Giannis should be considered the best player in the world, I think Giannis also has to be considered probably a top 10 basketball player of all time. And the reason why I say he'd probably be a top 10 basketball player of all time, because if you look at it, all those top 5 guys, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and even if you want to throw Kareem in there, all those guys, he would have done something that they all did, and that was go back-to-back, winning not just the NBA Finals, but probably winning the Finals MVP, because I'm sure if he gets to the Finals, he's probably going to win the Finals MVP, and that's very impressive when you think about it.
But top 10 all time? So you saying, so if Giannis goes out and wins a chip this year, he's top 10 all time,
He has,
right?
he has a hell of a case to be top 10 all time.
He has an argument for top 10. How many active guys in the league have a legitimate argument to be in the top 10? Obviously LeBron, right? We know that whether you have him at 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, you know he's in the top 10. But could Giannis jump over KD even in the legacy argument this season? I was talking about active. If he wins the championship this year, he's definitely, no doubt about it, all right, the best player in the world right now. But you saying at the age of what, 27, Giannis can be top 10 all time? That gets scary.
It does get scary.
That gets scary.
That gets scary. And the reason why it gets scary, because we're not just talking about Giannis possibly like being top 10. We're talking about, can Giannis make a run or a case for be like mentioning with those other three guys?
Say the three names again, please, just so we're on the same page. No. I just want to make sure, the room is on the same page with the names that you feel are on that list.
My list, when we talk about the greatest basketball players of all time, my list is Kobe Bryant, my list is LeBron James, and my list is Michael Jordan. Now, I don't care how you rank it, 1 through 3, but I think those three guys are the best basketball players of all time. If Giannis goes out and he wins a championship, to me personally, he will have a case to be top 10 all time at the age of 27, winning Defensive Player of the Year, winning MVP, did something that hasn't been done since Hakeem and Michael Jordan. He's already did that, going back to back. And it's just like, it gets scary because he'll be 27 years old, still in his prime, and he'll have a chance to kind of continue to add to his collection, continue to add to his resume. And that gets very, very scary.
No, it definitely gets nasty. The thing that always gives me pause, though, is like we have to wait to see if he actually does it.
True.
Right? Because with the whole, like when Kawhi, right? I was saying, like, had Kawhi won that championship, right? I think it was in the bubble, like you blow a 3-1 lead. Conversations could have happened. You win that championship, you got 3 chips before the age of 30. You got 3 Finals MVPs on 3 different teams. And it all sounds nice.
It sounds like, but
it sounds nice.
But it
sounds
didn't
pretty. It sounds pretty, but then we hype them up and then it doesn't happen.
True.
So we just gotta play the waiting game. I would tell you this though, Giannis not having Chris Middleton, if he goes out and beats the Celtics, that says a lot about where he should stand in the overall rankings. But talk to me too, we got Philly, Miami, second round. You have a pick in that series you want to go with?
Probably the Miami Heat. Who said that? Somebody said Miami in 6?
Yeah. Miami at 6?
Why?
I'm a Heat fan.
Energy.
I respect it. I definitely can see that, Miami in 6. I think when we talk about teams in the NBA, for it's like the most balanced teams, Miami Heat definitely have an argument for that. I feel like you have defensively guys that can play 2 ways, 2 sides of the ball. You have a star in Jimmy Butler. You got a guy that's championship cruiser in Kyle Lowry. And you also got shooters, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. And then don't let Victor Oladipo, who just closed out the Atlanta Hawks, don't let him be the X factor going forward in the playoffs. It gets really scary, not just for the Philadelphia Sixers, in my opinion, but probably for the entire Eastern Conference.
Yeah, but the Philadelphia 76ers aren't the Atlanta Hawks.
True.
They got the 2 best players in this series.
So did the Nets against the Boston Celtics.
That is a fantastic point. You're absolutely right. That you are, huh?
They also got Harden.
Yeah, you got Harden. Oh, that's heavy. I agree, but that's still heavy. Shots fired. Like I said, you're not wrong, but but the thing is too, we've seen Jimmy Butler perform at the highest level in the finals, right?
True.
And I know a lot of people have still been waiting on James Harden, Joel Embiid to really perform and get that chip. But maybe this is that year, right? Maybe this is that year. I think, it's funny, the 3 out of the 4 teams in the Eastern Conference, you can make the case this is their year.
Definitely.
Right, like this is like, okay, this is their first real chance at getting a title. Because even with Miami, when they played the Lakers, like, all right, what they did to get there, it was cute.
Yeah.
It was inspiring. But they weren't about to beat the Los Angeles Lakers. Like, it was clear. But now, they could win the whole thing and it wouldn't be surprising.
The Philadelphia Sixers. I would say It depends on what James Harden we're going to get. Are we going to get the Houston Rockets version of James Harden? Because I love what James Harden's doing. He's averaging, like 20 and 10 this regular season. He's averaging, 18 and 14 this playoffs right now. And I'm not really a stats guy, but I had to point out the stats. But it's just it's going to be a situation where James Harden is going to have to go out and get you 30 to 35 points this series. Because especially with that defensive team and that philosophy that the Miami Heat have, he's going to have to show up offensively. So he's going to have to turn back the clock at least, I feel like, a couple times this series against the Miami Heat. If he does that, then I say it gets more likely that they can probably get it to at least a 7-game series. If he doesn't, I wouldn't even be surprised if the Miami Heat knock him out in 5, honestly.
5?
In 5.
In
Easy.
5?
In 5.
You call it a gentleman sweep on Philly?
In 5.
This is very similar to the Raptors series, when a lot of people are like, oh, they have all these, different pieces that can contain Embiid, whatever that means. You can slow Joel Embiid down. James Harden might have fits, whoop-de-woo. And then the Sixers ended up being up 3-0. And so again, Miami isn't Toronto.
They're not
saying
exactly.
Miami ain't Toronto, right? There's a reason why they're the 1 seed. But I'm just saying, sometimes I feel like people forget because they have such high expectations for Embiid, for Harden. It's crazy. Even as the 1 seed, the Miami Heat don't really have high expectations, or people don't have high expectations for them.
That's
it's
true.
You can make the case that people had higher expectations for a 1 seed for a 7 seed, than a 1 seed.
But that's because when you listen to the national media cover the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Lakers all season long, of course, most people are going to say yo, that's why it was like that. But if you watch the game and you also listen to No Pump Fakes, we talk about all the teams. We cover all the teams. So it's no surprise. It really wasn't even surprising if you saw how the Brooklyn Nets were playing all year that they struggled against the Boston Celtics. It's really not going to be a surprise if the Miami Heat go to the Eastern Conference Finals, because if you've been watching them, you know how great they are.
Of course, but to that example though, even though the Nets struggled with the Celtics and all that, I still expected at least 1 dub.
At least 1 game.
I can't get 1 game?
At least 1 game.
This uno? You know how bad a sweep is? Especially in the first round. Now again, it is what it is. You keep it pushing. They have guys that are first ballot Hall of Famers, but 1 game, literally every single team in the NBA playoffs got 1 win, except 1. And again, like I said, it is what it is. But you kind of live to see another day. But I still think though, with the way the league is kind of set up, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? People get caught up in falling in love with paper, like rosters. And what if I told you before the season started that literally the Nets and the Lakers would have 0 playoff wins this season? I don't think there's a single person in this room that would have believed that.
You probably wouldn't have. That's
You know
why
what I'm saying? Not even, we were talking about them playing in the finals, let alone, make the playoffs, win a couple of games here and there, but meet up in the finals. And so, but I think that's just a testament though to teams like Milwaukee, teams like Phoenix, teams that, are really getting it done. So, I mean.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. I don't really have too much pushback with that. I mean, obviously that's why you play the game. You got to show up. Because on paper looks good for a lot of things. But at the end of the day, you got to play.
Can you break down your difference between the eye test and analytics for me, please?
It's kind of what you just talked about. On paper, if you're looking at the stats, you're looking at these guys historically and all the things that they've done, it's this team should be a championship team. But if you watch the game, you use your eyes, you see the Lakers are really old. Or the Brooklyn Nets don't really have any chemistry. So it's just numbers-wise, you'll say before the season started, the Los Angeles Lakers should win the NBA championship. The Brooklyn Nets should win the NBA championship. But when you start watching during the regular season, you start watching how they play, you start watching their offensive formula, offensive philosophy, you think and you sit back these numbers that were projected in the regular season before the season started isn't really matching up with the on-court production.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. People like the idea of having a bag and having skill and all that, but to me, how I am. I like winning. I like the idea of having more points than the other team. I think if you're a person that produces, I think if you're a person, regardless of skill, if you're able to get it done, that's what matters the most. And I know people have mixed opinions about Giannis and you know, his inability to like dribble or have handle. It's crazy how people will focus more so on a person's inability than their actual ability.
Sure.
You know, like you get a player of that stature, why is it that we're so quick to say, he can't do this, he can't do that? Let's focus on what he can do. You know what I mean? Like you give me 50 points in a closeout game of the NBA Finals, that's nasty work. You know what I'm saying? You win 4 straight in the NBA Finals. That's crazy. You know, like that's rare air. That's not something you see every day. That's not something that we'll probably see for a very long time, especially with this next crop of players. You know, you got the Trae Youngs, the Zions, the Luka, the Devin Booker, the Donovan Mitchell. You know, so if you had to pick one though, right, of those 5, of that group of 6, who's your favorite coming out? You know, that 25 and under kind of thing. I mean, I already know.
I just said it. Yeah, we already talked about it earlier. It's Jason Tatum. Who's your favorite? That's what I want to know. Who's your favorite? Who are you leaning towards?
My favorite of that group, I like Book.
Like Devin Booker?
I like Devin Booker because he's shown what he can do when it matters most, right? Like 40-point games first of all, 40-point games in the NBA is challenging, right? But to do it in the NBA Finals at that age, when all the pressure's on you for the first time, right? The first trip to the Finals, and then you give me 40, that's not something to you know, just, you know, ignore. But I don't think a lot of players, I hate to say it, would probably even be built like that. There's a lot of talent in the league, don't get me wrong, but to really perform when it matters most in the Finals, when everyone is looking at you, and then, mind you too, to be a player that, quote unquote, hasn't proven as much as like LeBron or KD or whatever, because those guys, you know, they could literally stop playing basketball today and they would, you know, they're stamps. But Devin Booker, you know what I'm saying, with this being your first Finals appearance, you give me 40, I mean, you stamped in my eyes.
One would argue, though, that if you swapped Devin Booker and you placed on that run last year in the NBA Finals that the Phoenix Suns went on, if you swapped Devin Booker and you placed Luka Doncic, if you placed Jason Tatum, the same thing would have happened, or they probably would have won that series. So how can Devin Booker be considered probably the best 25 and under player if he really didn't get it done? I think that conversation would be a little bit different, like, yo, if he would have got it done. I understand scoring 40 in the Finals and stuff like that, back-to-back games, that's impressive, but a lot of people will say, like, yo, if the Phoenix Suns had Luka Doncic instead of Devin Booker, or if they had Jason Tatum instead of Devin Booker, they probably win that series.
I mean, that's cool. I mean, my thing is, when it comes to sports, you can always play the if game, right? Like, if Allen Iverson was 6'10", he would literally be the greatest player of all time, right? If Giannis had a three-point shot, he would literally be the greatest player of all time, so on and so forth. So my thing is, Devin Booker has done it, right? He's proven, whether you like him or not, he's literally brought a team to the finals. Those other guys that we named have not. And even with the Luka example, the idea of not making it out of the first round, I know they just, you know, did it recently, but just the idea of like playoff success matters, especially when you consider what your other counterparts are doing. If everyone else 25 and under wasn't winning, hey, all right, whatever.
When does team environment and the team that you on come into play with that though? Because the person you named was Devin Booker. He's been on the better team for the past like 2 years when we talk about it compared to his counterparts. So where does that come in and play and it has a factor?
It's definitely a factor. I mean, no one is perfect. No one can just bring, you know, a team full of, you know, mids to an NBA Finals unless your name is LeBron James. But I think like it's also like because we've also seen the opposite. We've also seen players with great teams not show up when they matter the most. You know what I mean? So to me, I think it's a matter of your opponent. Are you able to beat who's in front of you if they're a good team? Rising to the occasion. But I don't know. That's a good one. You got a cap or no cap? Should we introduce them to a cap or no cap segment?
Go ahead. I don't have one, but yeah.
Okay. All right. I feel like we got to keep it Knicks related for all the lovely New Yorkers out there. That's too easy. What's more likely? The Knicks make the playoffs next year?
Oh, I got a better one.
Or the Knicks win the finals in the next 5 years?
Probably neither are likely, if we're being honest. But I got a cap or no cap. Will RJ Barrett be an all-star next year?
Next year?
Next year. This is a guy that every year that he's been in the NBA has improved. This is a guy that a lot of people feel like, yo, he can be the first option on a playoff contender team, that the New York Knicks need to run their offense through RJ Barrett. They need to get rid of Julius Randle. So can he make that, or maybe not be an all-star next year, but can he become a all-star caliber player? That's probably a better question.
Yeah, well, okay, well, if you want to play it safe, then yeah, I think he can become an all-star caliber player.
Caliber, okay.
But my thing is, can you be an all-star caliber player but never make an all-star game?
True.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you
there's
definitely can.
guys, because even though you don't make it to an all-star game, that doesn't mean that you can't compete, or like if you're tossed into the game, you can't last, if you will, right? Like,
Sure.
so, but to answer your question, no. And the only reason why I say that though is because, you know, I like to think backwards. So if we're gonna say that RJ Barrett can make an all-star game, I'm with that. If you feel that way, cool. But who isn't making it? Right? Like that's the thing that we have to also talk about. You know, you got LaMelo in the East, you got Trae Young in the East. Like we're in a time where guards are really run the league, especially in the Eastern Conference. You know what I mean?
He's a kind of a forward.
Who?
So RJ Barrett.
Oh, okay.
So you look at Kevin Durant, he's a forward.
And you know Kevin Durant's gonna make it. You look
True.
at Giannis, he's definitely gonna make it. So honestly, it might be even worse that he's a forward. So that might, you know what I'm saying?
I mean,
you
you
got
got
Jimmy Butler.
Chris
I mean,
Middleton.
it's tough. It's tough.
It's
Like,
tough.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of making the All-Star game. I think people forget that. People talk about snubs. Like, it's one thing to get snubbed off a list, but then it's like, all right, who are you replacing them with? You know, like, who are you? Like, whenever we do these lists of like top 10, top 5, and people say, yo, where's so-and-so? Cool. Who are you taking off? People don't like to acknowledge that part. Like, if you feel like your favorite player or team should be on somewhere, then it's like, okay, the next step is someone else has got to go. Not everyone can get an invite. Because if everyone gets an invite to these top lists, then it's not that big of a deal. Can you imagine if an All-Star game had 80 players in it? That's not, whoop-de-doo, that's not that big of an accomplishment.
That's
right?
real.
There has to be a cutoff. People have to be snubbed. That's what makes it the elite of the elite. It sucks, but you know, that's just how life is.
I agree.
I mean, but we'll see though, the future of the Knicks. I mean, you know, what was done with Kemba Walker definitely hurts my heart, you know, being a UConn guy.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, they're doing a lot better than other teams. You know what I mean? It could be worse. I mean, you want to list out your poverty franchises?
No, I'm not gonna do that.
Why not? Don't run now.
I'm not gonna do that.
Come on.
I'm not gonna do that.
All right, so at the top of that list, though, you had.
I have the New York Knicks, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward in the future. I mean, they have RJ Barrett, they have some pieces, but like I said, the key to the New York Knicks' future is probably none of those guys on those lists. It's probably going out and getting a guy like Donovan Mitchell at the end of the day.
I mean, if Spider does go to the city of New York and plays for the Knicks, I'll be happy. Honestly, I'll be happy for both parties. You know what I'm saying? I'll be happy for the Knicks. And I'll be happy for Spider because that means he'll be out of Utah. You know what I'm saying? That means he'll have a stronger fan base, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? He'll be, you know, obviously, the Knicks, you can say what you want about their organization and stuff like that, but to me, it's better. Basketball is better when the Knicks are great.
I agree.
You know, basketball is better when the Knicks are great. You know what I mean? Like, it takes time. It doesn't happen too often.
Yeah.
But, you know, when it does, it's good.
Definitely.
For sure. But thank y'all again, you know, for the live recording of No Pump Fakes. Much appreciated. We got some takes off. And as always, we didn't agree on everything, but we had some solid takes. So just like that, y'all, we gone, we here, live record, No Pump Fakes. Peace. What's up, y'all? It's Theus McBee. Make sure you go follow No Pump Fakes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to your podcasts.